Looksmaxxing is a trend that has existed within the incel community for a long time, but it's recently become more mainstream. While some of the techniques are harmless, such as going to the gym or getting a haircut, others are much more dangerous. From DIY procedures like bone smashing and injecting yourself with hormones, to eye surgery that has left people partially blind. Let's investigate. If you enjoy internet mysteries and generally disturbing content, feel free to subscribe and turn on notifications for more content like this. If you're interested in supporting the channel, you can become a Ko-fi member or a channel member to gain access to uncut videos and other perks, or you can leave me a tip by clicking the thanks under this video. Thanks to anyone who considers this. This video will centre around various Looksmaxing techniques which may be triggering to those with body dysmorphia. Viewer discretion is advised. You can click the link in the description to watch a longer, uncut and ad-free version of this video which features extra details that were unsuitable for this cut. You've probably all seen the meme that's on screen now, claiming that the difference between a Chad and an incel is just a few millimeters of bone. This has circulated in the incel community for years, along with the accompanying views that a man's desirability to women is based almost entirely on his physical appearance. According to incels, Chads, or men who are universally appealing to women, have certain features that incels don't have. They're tall, muscular, with broad shoulders, prominent and angular jawline and cheekbones, and so-called hunter eyes, which have a positive or neutral canthal tilt, little to no upper eyelid exposure, and low, thick eyebrows. Some members of the incel community believe that if you're not born as a Chad, you've lost the genetic lottery, and it's over for you. There is no hope of improving, so you might as well just give up. Others, however, believe it is worth trying to change their appearance to improve their sexual market value, or SMV, through a process known as Looksmaxxing. This was once a term that was rarely heard outside of incel forums, but in recent times it has become a more mainstream trend, and now you can find countless videos and posts on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram and elsewhere teaching you how to Looksmax. Some of the techniques that are promoted are your average glow-up or makeover tips, things like getting a haircut, losing weight, gaining muscle, whitening teeth, starting a skincare routine. But there is a much darker and more dangerous side of Looksmaxxing that we're going to focus on in this video. It goes way beyond going to the gym or moisturising your face, and some people are even prepared to risk their lives for it. Before we get on to the extreme Looksmaxing techniques known as Hardmaxing, let's first briefly cover Softmaxing. Softmaxing involves non-invasive and relatively inexpensive methods of improving one's physical appearance, such as the ones I mentioned before, getting a haircut, building muscle, etc. Other methods include treating acne or other skin conditions, improving personal style, wearing coloured contact lenses, and taking over-the-counter supplements such as beta-carotene to improve skin tone and collagen to enhance overall skin quality. Most of these techniques are not inherently dangerous, however there are some highly questionable methods that are promoted to achieve the desired traits. For example, Starvemaxing, which is exactly what it sounds like, avoiding meals to lose body fat. I hope it goes without saying that this is incredibly dangerous and could even result in EDs. What's bizarre about this is that being too thin isn't even seen as desirable in the Looksmaxing community. They all want to be muscular, so skipping meals might help someone to lose weight initially, but it's actually counterproductive in the long run. Another concerning suggestion is whitemaxing, which involves techniques aimed at making someone look more Caucasian, such as bleaching their hair or using creams to lighten the skin. This is problematic because it suggests that non-white people are inherently less attractive, which simply isn't true. A lot of white people themselves will fake tan or sunbathe to get darker skin anyway, so it's not like there is one skin colour that everyone wants to have, and I personally don't think it has any effect on attractiveness. Since it's generally accepted within the Looksmaxing community that masculine features are more attractive, many also seek out ways to increase testosterone levels. There are some proven ways to do this, such as by exercising and lifting weights, eating a healthy, balanced diet, and getting good quality sleep, but Looksmaxers have some more unusual methods. One being Edgemaxing, which involves prolonged stimulation of certain body parts while avoiding actually finishing. Unsurprisingly, there's no scientific evidence suggesting this significantly increases or maintains higher testosterone levels beyond a temporary rise that can occur after abstaining from finishing for a few days. So to summarise Softmaxing, some of the techniques could be useful, some are a complete waste of time, and others are just outright dangerous or offensive. Hardmaxing involves more extreme and invasive methods of enhancing physical appearance. Some of the most common ways include taking steroids to improve muscles, injecting human growth hormone to stimulate muscle growth and make bones longer, and minimally invasive procedures such as fillers and Botox to improve facial features. It gets a lot worse than this, but these methods alone can be pretty dangerous. Side effects of taking steroids include heart attacks, strokes, blood clots, fluid retention, and in men specifically, infertility, reduced sperm count, erectile dysfunction, hair loss, breast development, and severe acne. Notice how some of the side effects are exactly the traits that Looksmaxing tries to avoid. As for human growth hormone, this can be prescribed by doctors for children who have conditions that may cause short stature, such as chronic kidney disease, Turner syndrome, and Prader-Willi syndrome. HGH can make children taller, but it won't increase the height of an adult because the growth plates have already fused. HGH can also be prescribed to adults with a growth hormone deficiency, and it can support people undergoing chemotherapy, but taking it without a prescription when it's not medically necessary is risky and can cause heart disease and diabetes, among other conditions. Another concern is how you might source the HGH. This will vary in different countries, but in the UK, the only way to legally obtain HGH is by getting a prescription from a doctor, which you can only get for approved medical conditions, meaning your only option is to find some questionable source that could be selling a questionable product. A thread on Looksmax.org lists 3 different types of HGH: pharmaceutical grade, generic grade from an underground lab, and generic Chinese. While the generic versions are much cheaper, they are not regulated and, according to the thread, carry a moderate infection risk and moderate to high seizure risk. Despite these warnings, the thread still explains exactly how to inject HGH and suggests how to find a source. As for fillers and Botox, this is one of the hardmaxing techniques that I don't totally condemn, providing it's done by a professional and not done excessively. Botox has been used safely for decades, and while there are possible side effects, most only last until the Botox wears off at the latest, typically 3 to 4 months. One example is ptosis, basically a droopy eyelid, usually caused by Botox in the forehead. It often goes away on its own in a few weeks. Fillers are also relatively safe, though are considered more dangerous than Botox, with a higher risk of complications, such as blocked blood vessels that can lead to skin necrosis. Both Botox and fillers may not end up having the desired effect though, and while fillers can be dissolved, you just have to wait until Botox naturally wears off. I got Botox for the first time a couple of months ago to reduce the wrinkles under my eyes towards the edges of my face, and it looked great until new wrinkles started forming near my nose. The Botox is starting to wear off now, and the old wrinkles are coming back, but the new ones are still here, so right now I just have double the wrinkles I had before. This is a pretty common occurrence. When you paralyze one muscle, another is going to start working harder, which can create more wrinkles in a different area. As for filler, these injections can migrate and make the face look unnatural, particularly when someone repeatedly gets the procedure long term. So overall, I wouldn't encourage anyone to get these things done, but when done by a professional, they are significantly less risky than injecting yourself with questionably sourced human growth hormone. So if you have to get something done, Botox and fillers are better than most other hardmaxing methods. Botox and fillers are often used by male Looksmaxers to enhance their face shape, for example by increasing the cheekbone or the jawline, but the results are not permanent and may not be as dramatic as expected, which can encourage them to seek out more extreme solutions. There are a number of surgical procedures that can be done to change the shape of the face. These include rhinoplasty, also known as a nose job, to change the shape of the nose; orbital box osteotomy, where the bone surrounding the eye socket is cut and repositioned to change the appearance of the eyes and surrounding structures; bimaxillary osteotomy, where the upper and lower jaw are cut and repositioned to fix recessed jaws and improve facial balance; chin implants to improve the structure of the lower face. I didn't even know some of these surgeries existed until I started looking into Looksmaxxing, and it should come as no surprise that they can be pretty risky. As with any surgery, there's a chance that you might die on the operating table. With procedures around the eyes, you're literally risking your vision if something goes wrong. Later in the video, we'll take a look at an actual example of this. Bimaxillary osteotomy and other procedures in the lower face carry a risk of nerve damage that can result in permanent numbness in that area of the face. As I said with Botox and fillers, the results might not be what you expected, though unlike Botox and fillers, the results of these surgeries are permanent. If you even have a chance of fixing it, it's going to mean more risky surgeries and thousands more pounds spent. One thing I noticed when researching Looksmaxing is that these people seem to create problems to then fix with surgery. As a woman, never in my life have I looked at a man and thought he needed surgery to change his eye shape or make his cheekbones bigger. Sure, so-called hunter eyes can be attractive on some people, but the vast majority of men I would say are attractive don't have hunter eyes. A strong jawline can look great, but you can still look great without paying thousands of pounds to get your jawbone broken and repositioned. Ultimately, if someone really wants to get cosmetic surgery, that's their choice. I'm all for people doing what makes them happy, but I do think these obscure surgeries to fix problems that I doubt were even problems a few years ago seem like more risk than they're worth. In addition to facial procedures, there is also leg lengthening surgery that involves breaking the bones in the legs, usually the femur or tibia, and inserting a metal rod into them that slowly extends, causing new bone to grow and eventually increasing your height by 2 to 6 inches if successful. This is seen as one of the surgeries that can make the biggest difference for men under 5'6", as it supposedly brings them into what is known in the Looksmaxing community as the visible male threshold. However, this procedure is extremely painful and you can expect a slow recovery involving months in a wheelchair, then with crutches until you're able to walk properly again, if you ever can walk properly again. If it goes wrong, you may end up permanently disabled. Other potential complications include nerve damage, bone infection, and arthritis. All these surgeries can go disastrously wrong even when performed by a skilled surgeon, but an even more concerning hardmaxing trend is DIY procedures, one of which is face pulling, which according to the Incel's wiki is, quote, an experimental Looksmaxing technique based on orthodontic maxillary protection. The aim of a maxillary protection is getting a face with better forward growth. Orthodontists have been using maxillary protractors like the reverse pull headgear for decades to treat medical cases like underbite, which need a maxillar protraction to fix the maxillary deficiency, However, these orthodontic devices are only used on children because clinical studies have proven that maxillary protraction is very slow in adults. Face pulling involves the usage of a face puller, a device composed of an orthodontic removable appliance fixed to the upper dental arch, maxilla, an external puller, a tool which pulls the appliance forward with the force of elastic bands. So face pulling is a procedure that is sometimes done on children. However, according to my research, maxillary protractors are usually used to treat conditions where the lower jaw protrudes forward beyond the upper jaw. Most Looksmaxers who are invested in face pulling seem to want to improve lower jaw recession, or at least to move the lower jaw forward for a more so-called masculine-looking jaw. It may be possible to use a face-pulling device to improve lower jaw recession, but this is not the most common use of these devices, so Looksmaxers are basically creating their own method based on the logic of a legit procedure that first of all is only performed on children, and secondly is not used to treat the condition these Looksmaxers want to fix. What could go wrong? The Incels Wiki references a paper published in 2014 that aimed to find out if Class 3 malocclusion in young adults can be treated with expansion/face mask therapy. Remember, Class 3 malocclusion is where the lower teeth are positioned in front of the upper teeth, the opposite problem of what Looksmaxers often believe they have. The paper details a case report of a 19-year-old woman who underwent treatment for 17 months, which included 4 months of protraction for 18 to 20 hours per day. By the end of the treatment, her pagonion, the most forward point of the chin, had moved 2 mm down and 2 mm backward, and her upper lip moved forward 2 mm. Looking at the before and after photos though, this result is not really noticeable at all. Her teeth look a lot straighter, but there doesn't appear to be any visual difference in the structure of her face. The Incels Wiki even acknowledges this, quote, "This number was enough to correct the malocclusion of the woman. It is not enough to consider face pulling a satisfying Looksmaxxing technique, since bimaxillary surgery can achieve 10+ mm of maxillary forward growth in 2 hours. Around 2010, the now-defunct jawpaintmjtreatment.com appeared online. It was a single page that opened with the following text. Is it possible to get rid of all jaw pain, cluster headaches, sleep apnea, and trigeminal neuralgia in only 30 minutes a day while you watch TV or surf the internet? On this website, I will teach you how to build and use a mostly homemade TMJ treatment apparatus that I believe can give you better results than those who practice neuromuscular dentistry. Despite this intro, it seems like the owner of the site was actually intending to improve the aesthetic appearance of his jaw. He explained that he had some bad orthodontic work done when he was a child, and that, combined with his mother not breastfeeding him and instead giving him soy formula, supposedly resulted in his jawbone not growing long enough and what he described as the most messed up bite ever. At 38 years old, he decided to get braces for the second time in his life, and the orthodontist had to meet his very strict criteria. He lists a number of things that most orthodontists are supposedly wrong about, because of course he knows better than people who have studied the subject for years. Despite his strict criteria, he ended up with an orthodontist who, after 1 year, was not following his orders, so he decided to take matters into his own hands. Here are a few excerpts. Luckily, at this point, I stumbled upon this face-pulling technique through our aforementioned mutual friend and decided to give it a try. Not only does it close the bite naturally without any of that stupid elastics crap, but it gives you massive cheekbones without surgery, cures TMJ permanently, gives you a beautiful maxilla and jawline, and is the third dimension in the NCR experience. Since this technique was originally invented on a cricket helmet over in England, my friend and I adapted the technique to be used with hockey helmets we picked up on eBay for like $40. In my case, I bought a hockey helmet on eBay and ripped out the excessive foam padding and removed the useless parts like the chin strap. Then I went to the local hardware store and got 2 1/2-inch diameter and 3-inch long machine screws that are threaded all along the entire shaft, along with 2 hex nuts and 4 washers. Total cost $4. Then I went to Staples and purchased a stack of rubber bands for $2 and found 2 paper clips laying about the house. Total cost for equipment, $46. Mind you, if you don't have braces, you will need to get a retainer with special hooks on the front made from heavy steel wire. Naturally, this is a custom item that most dental labs have never seen before but can easily build for you if you explain it to them clearly. My friend who turned me on to this technique does not have braces, so he had his local dentist take an impression of his teeth and he sent the impression to some dental lab that made it for him. Please note that this isn't your standard Hawley retainer, which would be all you'd need to pull your face, but a custom removable appliance for expanding the palate and pushing the maxilla forward. Anyway, as you can see in the pictures below, I used the paper clips to attach the rubber bands to my teeth. Then I put on the mask and run the rubber bands through the grill and hook them over the bolts in the helmet. The key is that you must always hold on to the helmet with at least one hand for the 30 minutes a day you wear the helmet, because you must keep the angle of pulling up. You never want to pull down. How much force should you apply when pulling? The idea here goes back to using biologically compatible forces. If you pull too hard, the body will resist and not change. You need to start pulling lightly. Remember light wire forces. This will give the body the signal to move in that direction, and it will. You only increase the forces when you are no longer getting results. It takes time for the body to be comfortable with heavier forces. Make haste slowly. It is the light force that moves the bones because it convinces your connective tissues to release. What will happen? Your maxilla will come forward without surgery. As it comes forward, the bones around your condyles will rotate and the jaw will become loose and drop forward. Therefore, you will not be pulling just the maxilla forwards and end up looking like an inbred R-word. Not only your maxilla will come forward, but your entire face will, especially your cheekbones, so if you don't have cheekbones, you will get them with this technique. Your whole face will come forward and your jaw will follow along, getting rid of TMJ forever. It is absolutely amazing how fast this process works, and the change over the course of 1 year will be staggering. Many of these so-called self-esteem issues are just not being good looking. As your face improves, so does your self-esteem. Attracting the opposite sex becomes effortless. According to this guy, you only have to wear this device for 30 minutes a day and you'll notice results in 1 week. Then in 3 months, you'll be a totally different person. This is obviously total BS. It's not possible to change the shape of your jaw in 3 months, let alone 1 week, by 30 minutes of pressure every day. People wear braces 24/7 and still don't see results so quick, so this guy is delusional. I would normally call him a scammer, but he isn't actually selling anything and there were no ads on the site, so I don't think he was profiting from this in any way. Delusional it is. Anyway, to wrap this part up, face pulling is a terrible idea. It likely won't improve lower jaw recession or enhance facial structure in general, and there are significant risks. During any orthodontic treatment, you are at greater risk of tooth decay, inflamed gums, and other oral conditions. You can't DIY your way out of these risks. Face pulling is clearly targeted towards Looksmaxxers who don't have the money for surgery, and yet the complications that could arise from doing this procedure at home could end up costing a lot more to fix than what jaw surgery would have in the first place. Another, arguably worse DIY procedure promoted within the Looksmaxing community is bone smashing. This is based on the principle of Wolff's Law, which states that bone tissue adapts to the mechanical stresses placed upon it. In other words, if loading on a bone increases, the bone will remodel itself over time to become stronger. In typical fashion, Looksmaxers have misinterpreted this and effectively created their own law based on zero evidence that suggests you can cause bone growth by repeatedly exposing it to blunt force trauma. This is usually done with a hammer or another blunt object, and people will repeatedly hit their cheekbones or jaw in an attempt to make them more prominent over time. It shouldn't surprise you to learn that this absolutely does not work, and it can cause serious damage to your face and possibly even blindness. Health aside, you're likely to look worse than you did before after bone smashing for a long period of time, so it's counterproductive. Some people do bone smashing to temporarily change the appearance of their face due to swelling, for example by causing their cheekbones to swell so they look more prominent, rather than in an attempt to make the actual bone grow bigger. If we judge this by its intended purpose, this is a lot more effective than the bone version, but for obvious reasons it's still incredibly dangerous. Some sources suggest that bone smashing is nothing more than a meme and that there's no proof of anyone actually doing it, but all you have to do is search on TikTok or other platforms and you'll find countless videos showing people literally hammering their cheekbones. Whether they're actually doing it long term for the purported benefits or just doing it for views is unclear. I will say that most of the before and after photos you can find online are either edited or the difference is due to weight loss, natural face development over time, and even lighting and angles, not due to bone smashing, but that doesn't mean that people aren't actually trying it for real. There are far too many posts on these Looksmaxing forums from people looking for advice on how to do it or sharing their techniques for this all to be a joke that no one is seriously participating in. There's an influencer named Clavicular who has been gaining traction in the Looksmaxing community, and he has promoted bone smashing and has even done it himself on camera. He does it for facial swelling, not to grow his bones, and he recommends using makeup to cover up any bruises that occur as a result. Clavicular is a pretty interesting character in the community because he's apparently only 19 years old, and yet he's already pretty deep down this Looksmaxing rabbit hole. He started out just going to the gym and taking Accutane to get rid of his acne, but then quickly ended up turning to more extreme Looksmaxing techniques. He openly admits to using steroids, and this is thought to be the reason why most people think he looks much older than 19, as he just looked his age in the photos he shared of himself before Looksmaxing. He even claims he was kicked out of university because of his steroid use. He has also used human growth hormone and claimed he started it to help fix his broken ankle, but that it also improved his jawline. He posted videos showing himself injecting his own face to dissolve the fat in his cheeks. He also got Botox and PDO threads to get hunter eyes, though thankfully it seems he went to an actual professional for this rather than doing it himself. The problem is, he's not done yet. I even saw a couple of videos on TikTok where he's talking with other creators about getting leg lengthening surgery. He's 6'2". He's already taller than most of the population, and yet he's still not satisfied. He claims that he wants to do it for mogging, which is a term in the Looksmaxing community that basically means you have bragging rights for being more attractive and successful. He also said he'd get the surgery so he could make content out of it, which he absolutely could, and honestly he'd probably gain a lot of followers doing this, but I'm not sure I buy that these are the only reasons. Honestly, I'm concerned that he might be experiencing body dysmorphia at this point, and that after he already fixed the main problems he thought he had, he's now developed some kind of obsession with looking perfect, by Looksmaxing standards at least. As I already mentioned earlier, leg lengthening surgery is extremely painful and the recovery is slow and difficult. It's honestly just baffling for Clavicular to even be considering this when he's already 6'2", and if he goes through with it, what's next? Is he just going to continue getting dangerous, unnecessary surgeries until he becomes a totally different person or faces some irreversible complications? There's actually another pretty well-known Looksmaxxer who already went too far with surgery and is now regretting it. Frank Tufano started out on YouTube around 9 years ago, and much of his earlier content was discussing nutrition and promoting the carnivore diet. He actually has a website where he sells free-range grass-fed meat and another selling so-called free-ranged foods, everything from nutrition bars to organic russet potatoes, and he would promote his business in his videos. The earliest videos on the channel are actually about a double jaw surgery Frank had, showing the before and after and explaining the process. He claims this wasn't purely cosmetic and was also done to correct his bite. The surgery went well and he was happy with the results, however, he didn't stop there. In November 2023, Frank got cosmetic surgery to change the shape of his eyes. He went to Dr. Taban, a top oculoplastic surgeon in Beverly Hills, and spent around $30,000 in an attempt to get hunter eyes, but it went wrong. Seriously wrong. Shortly after the surgery, he explained that there was some asymmetry between the eyes, they were too close together, and he was cross-eyed, all problems that he'd never had before the surgery. Around 9 months ago, he uploaded a video explaining that he was told by a couple of different doctors that nothing could be done to fix it, and he said he was incredibly unhappy at the thought of that being the end result and him looking like that forever. What's even worse though is that the surgery left him, as he described, partially blind with a severe visual impairment. You can see this in his videos. His eyes are often watery and he can't open them properly. Since then, he's had more than 9 surgeries to attempt to fix the issues caused by the first, the most recent being orbital reconstruction, which he claims have all left him over $400,000 in debt. Understandably, he seems to be very depressed after all this. He uploaded a video after the orbital reconstruction in which he said, quote, "I was hoping I wasn't gonna wake up from this one, to be honest. That was the best case scenario. Just go to sleep and don't have to suffer anymore." He just looks totally defeated in this video as he's describing the pressure feeling he has in his head, the dizziness, and the fact that he can only look out of one eye at a time because the planes of vision are really different. Since the botched surgery, Frank has been determined to not only spread awareness of the alleged malpractice of Dr. Taban, but to get compensation too. He claims that Dr. Taban coerced him into getting the surgery in the first place and downplayed the risks, leading Frank to believe that the worst thing that could happen was that he looked the same afterwards. He says he had no idea that his eyesight could be ruined. Now, I'm not sure exactly how a surgeon coerces someone into cosmetic surgery, and I think Frank is likely exaggerating a bit there. It's also worth noting that Dr. Taban is a pretty highly regarded surgeon with over 18 years of experience, and there are countless testimonials from patients who have been more than happy with their results. However, if you dig a little deeper, there are also some less than favourable reviews. Just 6 days ago, at the time of writing this script, there was a 1-star Google review. Here's an excerpt. "I'm writing this review with a heavy heart, hoping to protect others from the trauma I've experienced. Getting work done by Mr. Taban was the biggest mistake of my life. What was meant to help me feel better about myself has instead left me disfigured, emotionally shattered, and mentally broken. Every day since the procedure, I've struggled to look in the mirror, and worse, I've struggled to find a reason to keep going. The emotional and psychological impact has been unbearable. At times, I found myself in such deep despair that I've had to fight just to stay alive. That's how serious the damage has been." This person doesn't actually specify which surgery they had done, but this is not the only negative review of Dr. Taban. Another from December 2023 on realself.com was by a man who had orbital decompression and almond eye surgery that he claims were botched by Dr. Taban. Similar to Frank, he implies he was pushed into getting the surgery when he had doubts. He even claims to have told Dr. Taban before that he would consider taking his own life if the surgery went wrong, and still, Dr. Taban reassured him that the risks were less than 1%, and the benefits far outweighed them anyway. So he went through with it and detailed a number of issues after, including different shaped eyes, one protruding more than the other, and the sclera showing when his eyes are in a resting position. So Frank is not the only person who claims to have been misled and pushed into surgery by Dr. Taban without being aware of the risks. Unfortunately, these serve as lessons in why you should think long and hard before getting any unnecessary surgery. If something isn't broken, is it worth the risk to fix it? Particularly when it comes to the eyes. Frank's eyes were fine in the first place, in my opinion. He really didn't need the surgery, but he did it anyway, and now he's partially blind. Thankfully, the most recent orbital reconstruction went well, so I guess we'll just have to wait and see what happens. Hopefully his vision can be restored in the future. I wanted to end this video by briefly covering perhaps the most extreme phenomenon that exists within this community, see it as end-stage Looksmaxxing. It's called Transmaxing, and as you might guess by the name, it's the act of transitioning to another gender to escape inceldom. Now let me preface this by saying that most people who do this are not actually transgender, and the vast majority of trans people have not transitioned for this purpose. In fact, there are only a handful of such cases that can be found online, and honestly I can't even guarantee their authenticity. So please do not apply this phenomenon to actual trans people, and understand that this is entirely separate to the trans community. Anyway, I found out about Transmaxing from the Incels wiki, where there's a whole page dedicated to it, featuring case studies of two people named Leslie and Remy, both pseudonyms. Leslie was born male and as a self-identifying incel began to feel that her male parts were pointless because she found it impossible to attract women. She clearly struggled with inceldom significantly, even stating that she considered travelling to Belgium or Switzerland to get euthanasia. However, when she heard of Transmaxing, she decided to give that a try. She believed that transitioning wouldn't be too difficult because she already had a small frame and somewhat feminine features. Here's a quote from the wiki. Becoming a woman, she learnt firsthand that the ease of access to sex was as different as night and day between men and women. Women are stupendously privileged in this regard, as Leslie soon found out. Leslie decided to transition because she wanted to experience this female-specific privilege for herself. After changing gender identity, she had no difficulties attracting partners of either sex. Leslie was no longer lonely. She specifically said and emphasized that she would never have transitioned had it not been for the inexhaustibility of male inceldom. The other case study of the person named Remy is similar to Leslie in that she never considered transitioning until well into adulthood. She never actually felt like a woman and was comfortable with her male body. She stated that she decided to transition because, quote, "I genuinely felt undateable as a man, and loneliness can make some people like myself take drastic measures." Leslie's experience was slightly different though, in that she eventually started to experience gender dysphoria before transitioning. However, she implies that she doesn't think she would have experienced this if she wasn't an incel. There is also a subreddit with the name Transmaxing that is dedicated to this topic. It has 4,500 members and tends to gain a few posts each month. This subreddit highlights the difference between incels who are transmaxing and people who are genuinely trans. And if you dig through the posts here, you'll find various examples of actual transphobia, from minimization of trans issues to outright slurs against trans people. Or there may be some users in this subreddit who actually do experience gender dysphoria. The majority don't and have no idea what that feels like. They just want to transition purely because they think it'll be easier for them to have intimate contact as a woman, so they don't have to be incels anymore. These people genuinely think all their problems will disappear if they transition to women. They're totally ignorant to the issues that cis women and genuine trans women face, and act like the worst thing someone can experience is lack of intimate contact. One post from 6 years ago was titled, "Why You Should Transition," and stated that becoming MTF is a way better option than living another 40 plus years as a male incel. The OP is someone who had decided to transition and had been on estrogen for around 6 months at the time of writing the post. 8 months before that, they had attempted to be gay for some time, so it sounds like they were just trying out whatever they could think of that they thought would get them laid. As a disclaimer in the post, they wrote, "Before all of this, I 100% completely identified as a man's man type of internal mindset, very heterosexual, and gay stuff just did nothing for me. It was only out of desperation and having the right features that I attempted this gender transition. By right features, I mean that I was only 5'8" starting out and had a 2.7 inches erect penis. Plus all my facial features are feminine and I was pretty cute even as a guy. With 4 inches to my height and I could have been a normie or even Chad Light, yet reality is cruel sometimes. Since being on hormones I have lost some height, so I'm closer to 5'7" now, a true manlet if I ever decide to return to manhood." This also shows how transmaxing is so different to people actually being trans. A trans woman would not talk so casually about the possibility of them deciding to, quote, return to manhood. In reality, most of these transmaxers would probably return to manhood at the drop of a hat if they thought they had a chance of not being incels as cis men. But it's so concerning how lightly OP seems to be taking all this. OP goes on to explain some not safe for work aspects of their experience throughout the transitioning process, then says, quote, "I'm beyond words enjoying my experience on female hormones. I still hate females, cucks and chads. This is the turning point for me. If I don't quit now, I will probably end up sterile and unable to break this intense addiction to female hormones and to men. Finishing transition will take work, but leads to a life of happiness. Not finishing means going back to a hell after experiencing a heavenly paradise, the likes of which I could never have imagined." I don't really know what else to say about all this other than that it's absolutely bizarre and unfortunately has the potential to create more transphobia in the world, despite the fact that these are not really trans people because most have not actually experienced gender dysphoria. Even most incels do not seem to see transmaxing as a realistic option, even if they feel like they have no other options, and as I said before, there are very few people in this community who claim to have actually transitioned to escape inceldom. Most just seem to be interested in the possibility of it. I wouldn't be surprised if it's just a fantasy for some of them on this subreddit. The way some of the posts are written are a little inappropriate, and it makes me wonder if these incels are just getting off on the thought of this being a way to no longer be an incel. Anyway, as for Looksmaxing in general, while I totally get wanting to change small insecurities you have, this goes way beyond that, to a dangerous level. It's one thing going to the gym to improve your physique, and another getting surgery to change the shape of your eyes. The worrying thing is that most Looksmaxers don't start out with the most extreme methods. They start by working out, then when they have a good level of muscle, they start picking at other things to fix that aren't even a problem. People don't realise it's a slippery slope until they already slipped down it. There's a reason why it's cliché advice to say you should learn to accept your insecurities, because it is important. If you can't be relatively happy with yourself before surgery, you're likely not going to be happy with yourself after. You can fix one problem, but then another will appear that you never even noticed before. The worst part is, there are so many teenagers in this community who have already started Looksmaxing and plan to get cosmetic surgery as soon as they turn 18. As much as I would like to say I hope this trend will die down, unfortunately, people will always be insecure about their looks, so this is likely here to stay. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts in the comments, plus any suggestions you might have for a future video. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing. Huge thank you to my Ko-fi members and channel members whose names are on screen now. I really appreciate your support. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time in a new video.